Hello, everybody, and welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs. I'm one of them. I'm Adam Amwala. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey. We're both in New York. What are the odds?
No, what are the odds? Doesn't happen a lot these days, but I've been home in New York and had a decent amount of opportunities to actually watch the Cubs over the last couple days, which,
Same.
still watching a lot more than, an average person, even more than the average Cubs fan, I think, but less than I have, I suppose, as a freak in recent years. But
Sure.
this week have seen a decent amount, and the 17 run game was pretty fun.
Well, you got to keep that run differential as strong as it is.
It is. I know. I love a good game, and I think you tweeted it from our Away Games Pod account. But just like we don't get a lot of games like these, so enjoy them, carpe diem, while they're here.
Totally. And I feel like we had, during the kind of heyday of the most recent Cubs run, we had a lot of them. I mean, I'm sure if you were to go back and look at the kind of the scores of games in 2016 and even that whole stretch from like late 2015 to 2018, there were a lot of laughers in the Cubs' favor that were a ton of fun. And I think we've kind of forgotten how free and easy and enjoyable those can be. And
Yeah.
listen, I mean, when the Cubs lost the first game to the Nationals and then went down 3-0 on Tuesday, I was about as low of a place as one can be as a Cubs fan. And I tend to be more on the positive,
Yes, you
try
do.
to be optimistic side of things, perhaps to my own detriment. But in that moment, I was like, "Fuck it, let's just get swept. Let's just commit to
Right.
selling off. Like, don't even give me any sort of hope that we can avoid it." But I still think we're probably headed there. I don't know what you feel like, but to backtrack, we've played 6 games now, 6 games at home since the All-Star break, and won 3 of them, which is not, when you are down by as many games as the Cubs are in the division, 500 baseball is not going to get you anywhere. So Cubs lost 2 of 3 to the Red Sox in kind of a weird lopsided series in both directions where like I think the Cubs got blown out pretty badly on Friday, and then it was a blowout in their favor Saturday, got blown out on Sunday because the Cubs physically cannot win on Sunday
Yeah, it's
unless
weird.
I'm watching them in person. Apparently, I feel like that Cubs Yankees game was one of the few Sunday games that the Cubs have won all season.
Start using those Southwest miles. Start bouncing
I think I
around.
might need to.
And
How far did it fly?
fly?
365 happy feet.
Yeah, I totally feel you on the first of all, coming out of the All-Star break, especially we had the Cubs top 3 pitchers lined up, which are just actively good starting pitchers. This matches up with even contending teams when you have Stroman, Steele, Hendricks, and yesterday the game Hendricks threw 6 innings, 1 run after having a bad game against Boston. Hendricks going 6 innings, 1 run, the bullpen blowing a lead, and then him not getting the win is just like all you need to know about it's stupid. The Cubs won, it's happy, but I was annoyed to see Kyle Hendricks not get the win
Right.
on that, and just
Yeah,
like
of course.
the stupid stat. But you have Steele and Stroman.
Also, the one run he gave up was the dumbest possible way, like a ball
Yes.
that hits the plate and bounces over his head.
Totally. And
Incredibly
it's
frustrating.
it's such a nice thing to see him come back like that after that bad game against Boston. But you have Stroman and Steele who've been carrying the team as much as they have. You have Hendricks who's come back and been good. That ERA is sitting in the mid low 3s right now, and that's exactly what you want to lock in for the rest of the year. The FIP is at like 4.2 because he's just not striking out even as many people as he usually does, I think. But you see the 3 pitchers lined up perfectly coming out of the All-Star break, and to lose 2 out of 3 really sucks. The hole they've put themselves in, you kind of can't do that. But also, man, your aces need to be able to be human sometimes. And this team is just not allowed for that, Like this, they have held it down so much at the top of the rotation. They need to not be perfect once in a while and get away with it. And the Cubs just aren't right now.
Right. Yeah, and it also is discouraging to see Jameson Taillon come out and have a pretty rough start. Not that I thought that his start at Yankee Stadium was going to mean that he was going to be an ace for the rest of the year, but it felt like the sort of appearance where you could see that leading to him getting that confidence back and feeling like he had found something. And
Right.
it was frankly just kind of back to the version of him that we've seen most of the year, where he's getting knocked around, getting hit really hard. Like it's not like he pitched into bad luck; he was getting crushed in that game
Yeah.
on Monday.
Exactly. And he's just, it's weird that he came here and sort of took on the problems that Alzolay used to have against left-handers, that Hayden
Mm.
Wisniewski has had against left-handers. It's weird because I haven't looked at the splits in a while, but he never was that bad against lefties. And he's been so bad against lefties that you look at it and he's been like more or less okay, I think, against righties. So he's just gotten hammered so hard from the other side. So I don't know what we're doing in terms of coaching and advice there, but ultimately he's just not executing. And I like Jameson Taillon. The track record is what it is. It's been
Hmm.
fine to good over the years, but man, it is getting to late July. If you are
Hmm.
bad through late July, that is most of the season. I mean, it is. I mean, it's already been most of the season. By the way, the Cubs have played 95 games, and Jameson Taillon is still bad. This is inching towards not only a lost year, but a actively detrimental year for this whole team. That has been net zero. It's been worse than a zero. It's
Hmm.
actively hurt the team, and it's giving Edwin Jackson vibes, who I also
Oh
liked,
God.
but
Ugh.
and I think I saw someone be like, "Well, it's not bad because the track records are different." Okay, but did Edwin Jackson ever have a year as bad as Jameson Taillon is having this year? I'd have to look it up, but
I don't know, but you are reminding me that Edwin Jackson would be a great person to just guess in Immaculate Grid.
absolutely, he's played. I think like pitched for like a near record number of teams, right? If not
And when
literally a
all
record
and when
number.
all else fails, someone else who makes us cringe, LaTroy Hawkins, always a good one to throw in there.
Oh my God, absolutely. Okay, so in 2014, Edwin Jackson was even worse than I remembered. That was 27 starts with a 6.33 ERA is what he was giving.
But where's JMO at? It's got to be comparable.
James, yeah, he's at 6.05 right now. So the ERA is right hugging the Edwin Jackson line
I
as
feel
we,
like
as
there
we
should
speak.
be, in the way that there's the Mendoza line for like being right at 200, there should be like a whoever like had a career 5 ERA. It should be like the whoever line.
That is I think that's a great call. We should find I maybe I'll make that a little homework assignment. Try to find a pitcher who we've like heard of who sits
Right.
at the 5 ERA. In my brain, Jeff Suppan is sort of like
Wow.
the line as a pitcher who's like, man, he keeps hanging around because is he just not bad enough? But like
Right.
a constant trade deadline acquisition for a team that needs a five
Hmm.
starter was
Yeah.
like Jeff Suppan played everywhere, and it's like, was he ever good? Like, not really. And
No.
he's sort of close to the
Oliver Perez.
Oliver Perez. Perez had like a cup once he was a reliever, he got good, right? But he had those weird
Right.
starting years where he was just like similarly not good over and over and just but hanging in. Okay, so Supan's 4.7 ERA. That's pretty close to what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
and Oliver Perez 4.37.
Yeah, 4.7 ERA in 17 years for Jeff Suppan. So that is about the line where it's like above this is bad, below this is fine, you know.
Right.
So whatever. But see, as we said, Steele having a bad game, which by the way, that's a Nico Horner error. what is what is the official scorer doing? I know it's not the most
They never
important thing.
changed it, right?
I don't think so, which could
Yeah.
literally keep him from an ERA crown as we're sitting
Yeah.
here. Because if Nico makes that play, that inning's not that inning, too. The Cubs are,
Hmm.
that game's tight. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating, but also obviously Nico's covering for Dansby, who was still dealing with that heel issue and out. And Nico's been so good defensively, he shouldn't have to be perfect. But the team we've built, these are the margins. Your aces have to
Right.
be good every single time, and your plus defenders have to be plus plus all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my guess as to that ruling is like it's almost like when an outfielder just doesn't see the ball and then it falls, and even though it should have a play that should have been made, it's like, well, it's a double because no one got close to it. Like I think the ball hit something and bounced over his glove, so it's like like an act of God, as they say in the
Yes,
insurance world.
yeah. State Farm is yeah, not covering what's going on there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we saw other weirdness with another plus defender, Cody Bellinger, who did exactly what you just said and completely lost a ball in
yeah.
center field, ended up diving for it.
But at
Um,
least he created the perfect GIF of this Cubs season slash era.
Looking up to the sky, shrugging, almost asking God, why you do this though? Basically, like what is happening to me?
Yeah,
Um, but Cody, speaking of bright spots, really good. He started great, big slump for a
yeah.
while, and now he's just sort of like locked into a real smooth swing, and he's hitting. I think he's still right there at 300 and providing a little bit of power now.
I just hate that the better he gets, the more convinced I am that he's going to be gone in 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because he's on a 1 year deal, as we all know. So far this year, Cody Bellinger's already put up 2.4 WAR. I mean, you could not hope for better than that. Sitting there with 12 homers, 12 stolen bases, 51 runs scored. His OPS is 140, meaning 40% better than league average, combining his on base and slugging. And he's the Cubs' best defender at two positions, and probably more. If you put him in right field, he's
Yeah,
probably their best right fielder. And you're exactly right that he and Stroman, I think, are pretty clearly the two pieces that, if you're going to keep him beyond this year, that's a contract that is yet to happen. In
right.
in Bellinger's case, very literally, and in Stroman's case, if Stroman's just going to opt out, and he should, you know. Um, and it seems like those two guys are, if it's not nearly an undefeated winning streak over the next week plus, the most
Yeah.
likely to go.
No, and I know that you can't play the game of like, well, if everybody had been healthy the whole year, who knows? But
Right.
I think it's easy to forget that Bellinger missed a full month.
Yeah.
And he wasn't necessarily like as he certainly wasn't as hot as he is now at that time. But if you think about having Bellinger for that full month, if he had started to figure it out at that point, and also
Mm.
not having Dansby in the lineup is absolutely brutal. I mean, the fact that the Cubs have actually gone above 500 without him, I
Hmm.
believe, is pretty impressive. I think I want to say that he injured himself in that final Milwaukee game, and then the Cubs won 2 of 3 in New York, and they've gone 500 since then. So even like staying afloat, I feel like is something. But I still feel that like the way this should have gone is like
Hmm.
you got to win 2 out of 3 against Boston, who is like a fine team but not an amazing team. The Cubs are
Hmm.
at home, and then you got to sweep the Nationals. There's no. I know it's baseball, and you can't win every game, and even the lowly Nationals are going to win some, but like you really needed like a 5-1 start here, not a 3-3. And frankly, it feels like coming into this St. Louis series. I always get emotional talking about the Cardinals. Um, Even 3 out of 4 doesn't feel like enough. It feels like you just there's zero margin for error if you want to avoid a sell off.
And three,
And
yeah,
yeah,
3 out of 4 is the bare minimum, right? I mean,
yeah,
is what it is now, and it seems like you're asking a lot, but this is the result of giving so much away earlier in the year.
right.
This is just, you need at least the equivalent bounce back when you have that, what was it, 1-5, 1-5, 1-6 series against Florida and Washington earlier this year, where they
Mhm.
had so many chances to be better than that, and that's why you put yourself in this place with a schedule of terrible opponents based on how they
Mhm.
played this year. But you know how like everyone's been laughing about and at the Cardinals online all year. The Cardinals
Mhm.
are 2.5 games behind the Cubs right now. This
Yeah,
series, Adam, this is the series against the Cardinals. As you say, 3 out of 4 feels like it's not even quite enough. If it goes the other way, we're coming out of this series with the Cardinals on top of the Cubs in the standings. And I mean, could there be in this moment any more of a big fucking, not even a nail in the coffin, like a Dracula ass stake through the heart than that
right.
at this point in the year? And I'm not expecting that to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I certainly don't want it to happen, but it is set up to be that kind of a seesaw moment.
Well, one thing that you've pointed out a lot, I think, on Cubs Twitter, and it seemingly more people are meeting us where we already were in terms of our frustration with Hoyer, is like it's not that you or I think that Hoyer and the front office went into this season planning to sell off. The bigger problem is that they went into the season thinking that they had a team good enough to not.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's well put. And it's sort of, I mean, I think I'd have to check the tape. I think we were saying that in the season preview, but I saw Brett Taylor of Bleacher Nation was, I think he was annoyed by, I guess, people. And I cannot imagine what they're dealing with in their mentions. And
Sure.
Evan Altman over at Cubs Insider, I know occasionally you'll get a peek into. He's a very good follow. Follow him. You'll get a peek into the Facebook comments he has to deal with. It's just the dumbest, angriest people on earth. So much of the time. Brett was worked up about people being like they always intended to sell. And they always intended to tank, and saying like not competing is not the same as that. And I agree with that. I think Brett's totally right. But it comes back to the point you made. If we're talking about how we judge this management, this ownership, that is a bigger indictment than if they did intend to sell. Because I know we said in the season preview, looking at the 1-year pieces they had, and that Stroman was going to be opting out. Like, to me, I'm looking at this and going, this is a flip. Because what I'm seeing on paper is not enough to be an actual contender. And if they thought it was, they are not up to the job. And it is interesting when people defend Jed Hoyer to I would say somewhat extreme degrees, when they will not let you use as a point that the guy's been here. He was a GM for many, many years and has been the head of baseball operations for a few years. They won't let you use that piece of information because they're like, well, it was Theo's show. So he couldn't do anything. There was nothing about the state of the Cubs was Jed Hoyer's fault at all, 0%. And yet they want to give him credit for the championship. He should get both, because this is not a new top level baseball operations guy. He should have known better that this was not the team to contend, as we're seeing right now, and the fact that he didn't, to me, is disqualifying.
Well, and being a team the with the size and the money that the Cubs have, frankly, it feels a little bit like how I feel about the Bulls right now, which is that like the worst place to be in any sport is to be right in the middle. To be not bad enough to commit to tanking and to actually get a top draft pick, or to just like know where you're at and accept it. But you look at the Bulls last year. I'm sorry, but like you can't tell me you went into that season expecting anything better than like a 6 seed at best, or probably a play-in team. And that's what the Cubs are this year. It was like this Cubs team, and I think we both recognized it, the best case scenario in which people overperformed and everybody stayed healthy and everything broke right was winning 85 games and somehow winning the division or sneaking into a wild card spot. It was never competing for a World Series.
No.
And I know that that you can't do that every year, but in some ways, I think that when you're a team the size of the Cubs, that shouldn't be that crazy to expect.
It's
when you
not.
Look at other teams like the Dodgers or the Braves or the Yankees, even in down years, they are always coming into that year as a top 5 revenue team, thinking that they can win the World Series. And maybe it doesn't work out for them, or maybe Carlos Rodon misses 3 months and Aaron Judge breaks his toe. But like, they still came into the season with a plan to win the World Series.
They're still over 500 in the best division in baseball. In the Yankees case, and in the Braves case, it's a great point. And the Braves, I don't believe, are even a top 5 revenue team.
No, probably not. Top 10 maybe, but
I think top 10, but they're not top 5. They're just a better organization. They're better at doing the baseball things than the Cubs have been certainly over the last 5 years. But obviously, the Braves have a huge track record organizationally of success for so long. And I think especially like you see how the Braves have made so many deals with homegrown players that have gotten these guys under market, but have gotten them committed in a way they can build around. And that is obviously a place where I would say Hoyer and this group failed in a nearly unprecedented way in my memory, like not building around anyone of the core players you had on the long term. So Yeah, I think it's not a lot to ask for a
Hmm.
team that makes the money and charges the prices that the Cubs do and has that fan support to be in it, to not have this many 3-year windows where you're nothing as
Hmm.
far as being a competitive team. And that you saying this made me think back to something you were saying earlier in the podcast, how watching in the down moment this week when the Cubs were a few innings in to the game they ended up winning but couldn't score, and you were just like feeling like fuck it, sweep me daddy, end it, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that, I think, makes a lot of sense to me, because this team has put us in a place where you want to pull the band-aid because this middling part is the worst, because you
Hmm.
can't commit in either direction. And that is exactly where they've put this team, is they've been in the middle too
Yeah,
much
it's just
over the
baseball purgatory.
baseball purgatory. And from a guy in Jed Hoyer who said, it's not a rebuild. I don't know what a rebuild is. What's a rebuild? What's English? Who went through
Hmm.
this evolution of mealy-mouthed misdirection in terms of communicating what the idea was. And the
No,
idea
that's an
is,
episode title.
yeah, mealy mouth misdirection. Yes. And it's just like, they haven't committed in either way, and they haven't had the skill to thread the needle like teams like San Francisco has been more
Mhm.
able to, maybe. So it's really frustrating.
I think the thing that scares me the most is the idea that that some of it is on purpose. At least whether it's the Ricketts or Hoyer, that it's like, can we make a team that's just good enough that people will still come out and watch them, but
Hmm.
not good enough to accomplish much more than that? But at the same time, you look at the crowds now. Maybe I'm imagining this, but from my memory, you go back and look at 2016, 17, 18, a Monday or Tuesday night was still packed. It was
Hmm.
not these crowds.
No.
So you would think that I don't know how that all works out, like how much spending on people and creating a better team and having sellouts almost every game, like what the numbers of all that are. But don't you want the stands to be packed every night? Is that
It's
not important?
It's not an insignificant difference money wise. There's this narrative out there that the Cubs, the fans always show up and they make money no matter what, so they don't have to worry about it. Last year, the attendance was lower than it has been. I believe this is true. I'd have to find the specific reference, but last year was the lowest attendance since the 90s. I'm fairly certain. And this
Yeah.
is post Wrigley renovation. Remember, we had some
Hmm.
pretty bad years in the 2000s. Last year was, from an attendance standpoint, worse. And that is leaving millions and millions of dollars on the table.
Right.
And like when you're talking about, yeah, well, but they saved millions on players. Well, what the fuck are we doing here? If it might net come out roughly the same, spend
Hmm.
money to put a team out there that isn't the thread the needle. Oh, I really hope everything goes right in this pitching and defense idea of a team. Who needs slugging? Who needs to keep any of that? We're going to be plus defense. Meanwhile, Jameson Taillon is sitting there with the literal worst defense in the league by the metrics behind him when he's
Yeah.
pitching specifically. It's just they're trying to thread a needle. You're not the Rays. You are not the Rays organization. Sorry, I wish you
Right.
were. You're not even the Giants infrastructure in the last couple of years. I don't think the Cubs measure up that way either. You are not good enough to thread the needle, so you need to use the advantages that you've been given by capitalism and your market and sign a team and develop players, but it can't be threading the needle. It needs to kick the shit out of people.
Right. Well, and if we're willing to indulge the biblical losses narrative of a few years ago, lest we forget the biblical gains that came with 2016. So
Yeah.
get the fuck out of here with that.
Yeah, a lot of gold, baby. A lot of gold coming in there. And it's an
Hmm.
easy place. It's an easy place to make money if you just don't fail time after time after time. And now we're like 2021. I really, in the sliding doors moments of sports and life, I would really love to see what would have happened if free thinking Jake Arrieta could have held that lead against the Brewers and stopped the 11 game losing streak that then
Hmm.
led to the sell off everywhere. Because since about that day, Adam, it has been bad Cubs baseball for. I mean, we're about it like it's around the 2 year anniversary of
Hmm.
that, and looking at 2.5.
Yeah, they last night during the game showed the that no hitter, the combined no hitter against the Dodgers, which was like the last good moment.
Yeah, man, that feels so long ago. Fucking
It
Zach
does.
Davies was involved with it.
Oh gosh, yeah. Turns out he was a pretty terrible man, Zach Davies.
Yeah, bad dude, bad guy.
Ghosted his wife. Fully
Yeah,
ghosted her.
he seems like a shitty dude. So
Now
yeah,
maybe that's the Mendoza line, the Davies line.
the day. Ooh, I'm gonna look him up real quick. But yeah, I think like I'm glad in this episode. I feel like this has been a lot of sort of like big picture talk as opposed
Mhm.
to specific granular statistic or player talk, and I think that's fine for where we are in in this point of the season and this sort of sliding door moment on not just this season but also next.
Yeah.
We're getting to we're getting to a breaking point, Adam.
In more ways than one. Let's see Zach Davies' career ERA. What do we got?
4.32.
All right, similar.
Little
Similar.
better
We're
than
still
I
looking
thought,
for that. We're still
honestly.
looking for that perfect five.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know where you're at. I still think that even if the Cubs can come out and win 3 out of 4 games or all 4 games against the Cardinals, it's gonna take a streak similar to the one they had before the All-Star break to move the needle. I think my feeling is like 80-20, 90-10 in terms of the percentage. I think there's going to be a sell-off. And maybe it's not like a total sell-off, but
Hmm.
even then you leave yourself in a position where, like, let's say the Cubs don't trade Bellinger and Stroman, and then the end of the year comes along, and much like Contreras, they never even extend an offer to either of them.
Hmm.
Then you're kicking yourself, saying like, why didn't you get something for them at that time? So that can't happen either.
Well, and I can say that the Cubs can make a qualifying offer to Cody Bellinger if they want. I mean,
Right.
which if they keep him, they will. Fact, and then he will
Mhm.
turn it down, and
Mhm.
then the Cubs either sign Bellinger to an extension, or
You get a
you
compensatory pick,
you
right?
get a compensatory pick, a pick in the second
You
to
can't
third
just make a
round.
whole team out of compensatory picks. That's my
Man,
opinion.
it feels like that's the business plan here, and it is lacking in ambition. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that, and then Marcus Stroman, when he opts out, is ineligible to receive a qualifying offer in that way. So
Mhm.
it's tough because it makes it seem like, from a value perspective, if you aren't going to extend him, with which they just don't do that kind of a deal,
Mhm.
if you're not going to extend him, you have to trade him. Then you just have to, unless you think you're contending this year, and
Right.
that I think is going to be the sort of, if that does happen, that's obviously the move from which there's no coming back this season.
Mhm.
You know.
Where I would think that for Hoyer and Hawkins, they it makes their life easier if the Cubs just play like shit for the next week, right? Like they I'm sure they don't want to be in a position where it's July 29th and the Cubs are 5 games back, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, what do we do here?
Right. I think from a clarity of direction standpoint, I think obviously a really strong move one direction or the other is what you want. That's not really the team you've built, though.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I don't think Hoyer and Hawkins wanted to lose this much this year.
No, of course not.
I don't think that was the plan. I think they wanted to win. I just think they didn't do a good job of it.
Mhm.
So again, that's what's frustrating. But yeah, I think this is like big picture talk before the seismic shift in the season happens,
Mhm.
right? And we'll have time over the next couple weeks, once these moves do happen, to get really into at least like the maybe more, I don't know, fun but interesting parts of like what players are coming and going, what are the
Mhm.
options from here. And it's got to be, there's got to be some significant trades, because this free agent class sucks. By the way, there's not. I mean, it's Ohtani, and then there's
Right.
some starting pitchers, but there's Cody Bellinger is probably the position player after Ohtani that you want the most
Mhm.
here. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm I want to be positive. I just don't want to feel stupid.
Yeah, well, welcome to Cubsdom, right?
Yeah.
Cubs fandom. Do you want to tell me about the? Want to give me the rundown of the next week, schedule
Yeah,
wise?
sure.
What you're looking at, what you're looking forward to, what you're expecting?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got four against the Cardinals here,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see the pitching matchup. So we got all right. So Stroman versus Mats tonight.
Got to win that.
Um, gotta win that.
Mats has been bad.
Yep. Steele versus Flaherty tomorrow. We love an Apple TV broadcast. We really do.
Kill
And
me.
I mean, Peacock, Apple TV, all these things just scream baseball to me. Um, just like the olden days. The Cubs are so frustrating that I honestly think they would let me sing the seventh inning stretch. I think they've gotten to that point where like half the time they're just showing the Harry Carey or Ernie Banks footage
Yeah.
from 10 years ago. I really think I'm an email away from singing the seventh inning stretch.
Let's get it. Let's
Um,
make it happen.
why not? But yeah, so we got four against the Cardinals, and then we stay in Chicago, but on the other side of town, two at the White Sox. It's weird. The Cubs don't have like the pitchers are listed for the next 2 days, and then there's nothing listed for the next two after that. But then
Okay.
it's like Hendricks is slated to start. I'm looking at ESPN, but in
Mhm.
any case, b- the next 10 games are eight against the Cardinals and two against the White Sox, all of whom are teams that are not good. And then you head immediately into a 4 game set against Cincinnati. So my feeling is at the end of that final game against St. Louis is Sunday, the 30th of July. So 2 days before the trade deadline. If the Cubs do not go at least 7-3, you're probably looking at they need 8 or 9 or to
Mhm.
win all 10. I cannot see a world in which even going 6-4 is enough for this team to, unless the Brewers and Reds get ice cold and lose all of their games, which I don't expect either.
The Reds have been cold. The Reds have gone three and
Yeah.
seven over their last 10. The Brewers have gained 2 games on the Cubs over the last 10. So,
Yeah, the Cubs are 7 games back in the loss column behind the Brewers right now.
mhm.
It is wild looking at the run differential. The Cubs are the only team in the Central with a positive run differential. They're
Yeah.
plus 38.
Well, that's
Um,
that's the only reason why like a 17-3 game annoys me because I'm like, let's not quit making it look better than it is. Like,
yeah,
like this is it does. I had a great time with it, but when you look at the run differential, it's like remember this is a lot of it. This in the
right.
A's series.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, you're
unfortunately,
right.
the Cubs have played themselves into a position where there is very little margin for error. If they want to avoid a sell off, they so right now the Cubs are 45 and 50. They're 5 games under
Hmm.
500. If they were to go 8-2 in this next stretch,
Hmm.
that brings them to a game over 500. And I think if you're sitting there at the end of play on July 30th, and the Cubs, I guess at that point would be 53 and 52,
Hmm.
and let's say they're 4 or 5 games behind the Brewers. I
Hmm.
think you can make the case to say, you know what, the run differential's been there. We've got some starting pitching. We've got some other pieces. We've got guys coming back from injury. Miles Mastroboni has naked photos of David Ross.
Yes.
We have enough
Let's
to
fucking go.
we have enough to justify trying. And honestly, like I'm sure there would be a weird like masochistic part of Cubs Twitter that's like we should sell off anyway
Mhm.
because it's all part of Jed's master plan for us to compete in 2043. But I think if the Cubs get to 500 ish, which would take a fairly impressive run here, if they can actually do that, and they're I'd say within like 5 games of first place,
Mhm.
I think it's not insane to try to add. I don't
Yeah.
even know what that would look like. Like I almost haven't let myself think that way because really since the Mancini blunder in London, it's just all kind of seemed downhill since then.
Yeah.
At that was the only moment in the season where I was like, all right, maybe we're actually gonna get back to competing.
Yeah, it really felt like that. And in terms of what to buy, if you want to hear names, I think one that's been bandied about quite a bit, Jamer Candelario, who can play the corner positions, was originally a Cubs prospect. Went to Detroit, I believe
Yeah.
that was that in
Justin
the
Wilson.
that was the Justin Wilson Avila trade, right? Yeah, because
Hmm.
also the Cubs traded Isaac Paredes in in one of those Detroit deals, who has since gone on to Tampa Bay, and he would look nice at third base too, whatever. But
Yeah.
Jamer could play those. Obviously, the Cubs have been super weak at the corners, first and third. So if you're looking for a buy, maybe that's a buy you do. He's been about 20% better than league average with the bat, but I think next week we're gonna know better. I think we have to. As you said, 8-2 seems like it's gotta be like that over the next 10. And I'll tell you, Adam, if one game over 500, if the Cubs had that 8-2 run, if we were one game over 500 right now, the Cubs would still be in third place. So just
Yeah.
as a perspective there. But can I close us with something genuinely positive?
Sure.
This weekend, we've got between July 21st and July 24th, it is the Hall of Fame weekend. And you know who's being honored over there is your boy, Pat Hughes, one of the all-time great radio broadcasters who we are so lucky to have had for as long as we have in Chicago, and who we will
Hmm.
continue, God willing, I'm knocking on wood, to have until the end of time, is finally rightfully being honored this Hall of Fame weekend, getting the Buck O'Neil Lifetime Achievement Award, or excuse me, the Frick Award. We've got the three guys being honored. Obviously, Fred McGriff and Scott Rowland are being honored.
Hmm.
McGriff, former Cub. And then Carl Erskine is getting the Buck O'Neil Lifetime Achievement Award. John Lowe gets the Baseball Writers Association of America Career Excellence Award. And the Ford C. Frick Award goes to your boy, Pat Hughes. So big congrats.
I mean, could not be better deserved. As someone who didn't get to grow up with Harry Carey, and I know Harry Carey, like towards the end of his career, was like somewhat of a drunk and like beloved for other reasons. But I would say because of his longevity, Pat Hughes is probably more meaningful to me than anyone else who I've ever heard call Cubs games. Like I grew
Yeah.
up with Chip Carey and Steve Stone. Obviously, Len Casper was the voice for the greatest Cubs teams of our lives.
Mhm.
But yeah, there is still like hearing that Chicago Cubs baseball is on the air. If I could like choose a sentence to listen to for the rest of my life that would bring me joy, I think that one's up there.
Hell yeah. And so it's time for Pat to get his flowers, get a little joy himself.
It is
And,
true, and I have one final happy note,
Yes.
unrelated to Pat Hughes. Shout out to our longtime loyal listener Tyler DePatis, who got married this past
shit.
weekend.
Yeah, I think I like some
So that's
photos
some
over
fun,
there.
That's
Big
some fun
shout
news. So Tyler, the pastry man, you've been
Yes.
a loyal listener, and you've come to some of our stand up shows, and we appreciate you. We're very happy for you and the misses, and many happy years to come.
Yes, congrats to the very lucky pastry woman. Hell yeah. Congrats to both you guys. Let's go win a bunch in a row. How about that? At Away Game Spot on Twitter. Check it.